Hey, welcome. In a world that's just obsessed with building a personal brand, have you ever stopped to think about the people who just don't? Today, we're going to dive into this really fascinating idea. What if real, solid confidence isn't about being seen at all? What if it's about the quiet power of having an invisible profile? Let's get into it. I mean, think about that for a second. In a world that rewards attention, the most confident people are often the ones you never see. That's a pretty wild claim, right? It totally goes against everything we're taught. It basically suggests that in our constant chase for likes, shares, and just being visible, we might be looking for confidence in all the wrong places. It really makes you wonder, what if the real win is found far away from the spotlight? Okay, so that leads us right into our first big idea here, the visibility trap. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's this trap we fall into when getting attention becomes the main goal. I mean, just think about it for a second. We're living in what experts call an attention economy. Every single platform out there is literally designed to make us perform, to post, to share, to get a reaction. And when we do, boom, we're rewarded with those little notifications. This creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop where we start to mistake being seen with being worthy. And if we're ignored, well, then we feel worthless. It's a really tough cycle to break out of.
But what's the alternative to all that? Well, that brings us to this other group of people, the quietly confident. And these are the folks who find their security, their sense of self, completely separate from any online audience.
And this idea, it just completely reframes the whole picture. So often, we see an inactive profile and we think, oh, that person must be disengaged or maybe even boring. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if the choice not to broadcast every moment of your life actually comes from a deep, super secure sense of self-esteem? You don't need the outside world to tell you that you exist and that you matter. And that right there is the core difference. This kind of confidence, it's self-sustaining. It's not fragile. It doesn't shoot up and then crash down based on how many comments you get on a photo. It's an internal state, not some kind of external performance. So how does this actually work? What's the psychological mechanism behind it all? Well, there's this really powerful concept that explains it perfectly. You can think of it as this secret weapon for this kind of inner strength. It's called the internal locus. So what is that? An internal locus of evaluation? Okay, fancy term. But here's what it means in simple terms. It means the main source of judgment and validation comes from inside you, not from what other people think. You become your own primary judge. Your sense of accomplishment, your standards for what success looks like, your feelings of worth, it all comes from within. You're not outsourcing your self-esteem to the whims of the internet. All right, to make this even clearer, let's actually break down the two different ways we can feel validated. We're going to look at two fundamentally different reward systems. Okay, so on one side, you've got external rewards. This is the world of social media, right? It's fueled by notifications, and it absolutely requires an audience to approve of you. This is what leads to that endless dopamine chase, where you're constantly needing another hit of validation just to feel okay. But then on the other side, you have internal rewards. These are fueled by your own personal standards. They only require your approval. And here's the crucial difference. This leads to a deep, lasting satisfaction, not just a fleeting high. And here's how that internal system actually works. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful loop. Step 1. You set your own standard. You decide what matters to you, what your goal is. Step 2. You go out and you meet that standard. And then step 3. You, and only you, generate your own feeling of satisfaction. See? No audience needed. It's a completely closed, self-sufficient circuit of self-worth. Okay, so let's tie this all together. What is cultivating this kind of security, a security that exists way beyond likes and shares? What does that actually mean for you in your day-to-day life? I mean, why does any of this matter? Well, the benefits are just huge. For starters, you become way less dependent on whatever the latest digital trend is. Your decisions become more authentic because you're making them based on what you actually want, not what you think will get the most engagement. This builds a deeper, much more stable sense of self-worth that isn't so easily rattled. And maybe the most important thing of all, it gives you freedom, real freedom from that constant, exhausting pressure to perform for an invisible audience. So, if there's one thing to take away, it's this. We've been taught that confidence has to be loud, that it's all about being seen and celebrated. But maybe,
Just maybe, true, unshakable confidence is the exact opposite. It's that quiet internal security that comes from simply knowing your own value, whether anyone else is watching or not. And that leaves us with one final question to think about. In a world that's constantly offering you external yardsticks to measure yourself against, what is your real measure of self-worth? Thanks for digging into that with me today.